Welcome to ABC of Storytelling 2.0. My name is Rituparna Ghosh, and every week I share tips, tricks, techniques and secrets that help you tell better stories. ABC of Storytelling 2.0 is a special series for anyone who believes in the power of storytelling. It's especially useful for professionals, entrepreneurs, businesses, managers, leaders, trainers, coaches, and anyone who wants to get better at storytelling bit by bit. ABC of Storytelling is also a social learning experiment, a platform of sorts that help you work on your story bit by bit every week. So I'm with you on this journey. You don't need to be a professional storyteller to be part of ABC of Storytelling. Just come along and work on your story. This week we are on the letter C, and so without much ado, let's get started. The first C that I have for you this week is counter story or counter narrative. Before you begin working on a story, take some time out to identify the dominant story or the dominant narrative in the minds of your listeners or your stakeholders. The truth is, whether you're dealing with your teammates, your senior colleagues, or your organization, your customers, or for that matter, anyone who doesn't know you as much, each of them has a story about you running in their heads. And sometimes when you have to tell a story, you have to begin by countering that story that is there in their minds. In my work as an organizational storyteller and consultant, I have worked with organizations in the past 2.5 years on varied projects. Some of them employee onboarding modules and some of them employee engagement modules, things which I have designed for organizations or even implemented myself. In each of these engagements, I have often been asked to create some meaningful stories which engage the millennials. Now, when I am told about the tricky situation of how organizations look at millennials, I realize that there's a lot of discomfort that comes in the minds of senior professionals when they have to handle new colleagues or younger colleagues in their workforce. Now, as a face of it, it may sound a little discriminatory, but my work as a storyteller is to really create story-based interventions that help the two generations connect. There are stories and there are counter stories between the two halves of an organization. People, the juniors who think about their seniors in a certain way and the seniors who think about their juniors in a certain way. My job as a storyteller is to bridge the two groups of individuals, and therefore my stories have to counter all the narratives that there are and create a bridge between two generations of workforces in an organization. Why is it important to have bridges, and how does storytelling help in forming bridges? You have to go and look up the previous video where I talk about B for bridges. The next C that I have for you is curate. It's a specific tip and a technique meant for those who are in communications. If you have to really tell an authentic story about your organization, you may have to curate stories from diverse sources. Say, for example, you want to talk about a certain project that you are running or you are part of. A project will have a different story, or every person associated with that project will have a different way of looking at it. If you have to tell the story of that project, you will have to speak to all the people associated with it and listen to their story from their perspective. And very interestingly, in this exercise, you will discover that the entire narrative or the authentic narrative of that project is a sum of all the little stories that people have to say about their experience of working on it. How do you know whether a story really fits in? That's really about how good your interview skills are and how you can extract information. Not everybody understands the true purpose of a story. They do not understand what is their role when they are sharing their little bit or their contribution to a project. And therefore, you have to look at your job as a story curator as somebody who looks at the entire project from a macro point of view to see how each story fits into the larger narrative. Sometimes it may look like working on an elaborate puzzle where every little story adds to the larger narrative, to the big picture that you're trying to put forward. A large part of my work involves story curating, and as a communications consultant and organizational storyteller, my job is to curate stories from diverse sources and then package them into meaningful content that make it for good consumption by viewers, by listeners, by people who know about the organizations I consult with. And therefore, from my experience, I can say that amazing things happen. Amazing things happen when I simply ask a person, tell me your story. I see their eyes brighten up. I see them suddenly take ownership of their stories. And in that, I discover that to curate stories is really powerful. It's really joyful, and it's very, very effective. When you are curating stories, be aware of the fact, like I said, not everybody understands the big picture. So you may have to go into the finer details, ask more probing questions to bring out the right story. Again, put one story with another story. You may have to verify facts, you may have to compare facts, you may have to go back and forth to understand how do two stories relate to each other. Story curating is one of the most powerful and most effective ways to bring diverse stories that bring a larger narrative. It's again an exercise that does not begin at one point and end at one point. In fact, it feeds into an entire exercise of telling stories about a brand, about a business, about an organization, or for that matter, even you as an individual. The third C of the week is craft, and it follows directly from my previous tip of curating stories. If curating stories is an art, then crafting stories is a fine art. In fact, it's a level deeper, something which requires a little more discipline and hard work. Remember, I said that not everybody understands the whole idea or the essence or the meaning and purpose of telling a story, which is when you curate a story, you may get a bunch full of facts, but no emotions or no process, or you may find certain elements from that story missing. To craft a story or to craft a story for impact is to really stitch together all the loose threads and package it in a way that it is meaningful for your listener or for who that story is meant for. What are the elements of a story? Wait for ABC. For E, where will I talk about the elements in a story? It is also important when you are talking about crafting stories to understand and identify which format are you going to use to put that story in, because a story can be told in many ways. It can be told orally, it can be told visually through audios, through videos, or through even let's say a graphic, and it can be also something which can engage a viewer or a listener on social media, or maybe even a hoarding for that matter. Now, when you're telling stories and there are so many diverse formats, you have to understand which is the perfect format for a particular kind of story, and if it has to be told in another format, which is the best way to do it. Adapting a story for multiple formats is a skill. To identify the right format for a story is also a skill. What are the formats of stories? You'll have to wait for ABC. For F, that's a few weeks from now. So watch out for the next 2 episodes, because what I talk about today, the cues to that are in the next 2 episodes. That's all I have time for this week. Stay tuned for more tips and prompts, and I hope you find them really stimulating, and I hope ABC of storytelling is really, really inspiring you to work on your stories. Follow our tips, follow our prompts, do them, and I promise I have a special live session only for those who follow up on the tasks, only for those who share about ABC of storytelling on 2.0 on social media. I am all committed to make this year fruitful for you. I want you to get better at storytelling, and I'm with you in this journey. All our resources on ABC of storytelling are free of cost now and forever. So get started, get working, join our Telegram community where you can meet other followers of ABC of Storytelling 2.0. Share your stories with each other, find a friend to collaborate with, find a story buddy, and get better at storytelling. Until next week, when I see you, happy storytelling.